Cars is one of the franchises that many people love and others hate. But despite being a movie aimed at children, it hides a lot of pretty disturbing deaths. Maybe when we were kids we didn't realize all this, but if we were to analyze these movies a little bit, they'd completely fall into a gore category. So now folks, it's time to analyze the worst deaths in Disney Cars. And we start with a rather tragic death, the death of Leland. Cars 2 sure was one of the most disturbing movies, and when you analyze it, it's full of crime and conspiracies, but it's especially full of death. Leland was a friend and partner of Finn McMissile. In the film, we're not shown a graphic depiction of what his death was like, but we're given a strong reference of what could have happened, and it was horrible. Finn McMissile arrives at Professor Zundap's lair and takes a few pictures of the place, which reveals a small cube of the same color as Leland. McMissile was shocked to see this, since the other agent had been missing for a while, and this cube gave him the idea that it really was Leland.
Here, there he is. Now Leland's very well done.
Some of you may already know what happened to him, but in case you still have no idea what happened here and how this cube came to be, let me explain. He was probably crushed with some junk jar raking machine, so that after a painful death, he could be cubed. Some even think that various parts of his engine and body were removed from Leland while he was still alive. Kind of like having parts of your organs removed while you're still alive, having no anesthesia. These parts and spare parts were given to Miles Axelrod and the other elements to keep them running. And this is reinforced by the following deleted scene. Keith Gremlin. Many may not remember this car, but this is one of Professor Zundap's henchmen. The last time we saw him alive, he was in a pursuit of Finn McMissile. During this chase, McMissile spills some oil, causing Keith to lose control, falling directly into the water. We think that because it's water, nothing happened to him, since we've seen in the Cars movies that they enjoy going to the beach. They probably even surf, and cars don't have any specific fear of liquids. Possibly they even know how to swim. But in the next scene, we see how he is destroyed into several pieces. 20 lemons exploding. We continue with one of the most disturbing deaths in Cars, and is that there was even a genocide and no one even noticed. And these mass murders were provoked by the same Finn McMissile. Who'd think that a hero could cause so many murders? And it is that when several henchmen of Professor Zundap chase them, Finn puts bombs in several barrels, which explodes in a brutal way, and certainly ended with the murder of more than 15 cars. Torque Redline. One of the saddest and cruelest deaths of Cars is the one of Torque Redline, one of the allies of McMissile. This car was a great spy who was hired to get information about Professor Zundap's evil plan. The spy succeeded in his mission, but before he could escape, he was cornered by several Professor Z's henchmen. They wasted no time and kidnapped him to get information about his other ally. When he resisted and didn't give enough information, Torque Redline was put in a machine, where he was tortured for several hours, until they changed his fuel with Alanol. This fuel would cause Torque Redline's engine to explode with a laser if he didn't give enough information. After discovering to whom he passed the information to, Professor Z didn't think twice about destroying Torque Redline, raising the radiation to the maximum and causing to end his life in a very tragic way. Towga Gremlin. Towga was one of Professor Zundap's henchmen. We're first introduced to this car when several lemons corner Finn on the oil rig, But what Towga didn't know is that this was the beginning of his end. In the Tokyo scene, they chase McMissile again. Between two cars, they try to throw Finn into Acer, who was waiting for him with a flamethrower. But Towga wasn't so lucky, so he collides with Acer and they both go flying. Acer was lucky, as he was held on a pole, while Towga falls from a great height, hitting the ground hard, which could possibly be a very painful death. Besides, this can be confirmed because after this, we don't see Towga again in any other scene. Fred Pacer and Stephen Trunkov. Fred is first seen when Torque Redline is tortured and killed. Fred is behind the camera. His tragic end is also due to Finn McMissile. After putting an end to Towga, Finn sends Pacer to the afterlife, throwing him into an elevator and crushing him mercilessly. And the same thing happened to Stephen, who for getting in Finn's way ends up thrown in the same elevator where Pacer died, being terribly crushed. Boy, does that McMissile owe several deaths. Tony Trihull. Cars 2 was full of many deaths, and the next one we'll see is the one from Tony Trihull. This one you may remember, because it's not about a car, but rather a ship. But despite being a huge ship, he wasn't spared from his tragic end. And his death was quite curious, since in one of the action scenes where Finn chases Professor Z, the magnet that Tony is carrying attracts several bombs that McMissile was carrying in his tires, thus causing his own death by a huge explosion. The next two deaths are those of Acer and Grem. After Tony's death, Acer and Grem start chasing Mater and McQueen, but their big surprise would be when Holly realized this. So she goes down to help her friends, diverting them from the road and making them crash in a bar, where cars are seen drinking. But these cars were not so friendly, so they were very upset about the mess Acer and Grem caused. They ended up getting beaten up by everyone who was drinking, and from the terrible beating they were given, this was a very painful death. And one of the worst deaths that holds a great mystery is that of Doc Hudson. As we know, Doc was one of the most important cars in Radiator Springs. He suffered a major accident before retiring from racing, but even though it was devastating, he became a doctor so he could fix himself and continue racing. He continued to teach McQueen lessons and leave a legacy within all Radiator Springs. But in Cars 2, there were some indications that Hudson had come to an end. This was fully confirmed with Cars 3, when he was given his tribute and the museum in his honor. Although we don't know exactly how he died, it is the saddest and most unfortunate deaths in all of Cars. Many think that Hudson simply died of old age. Having several injuries in his past, this may have caused him to develop into other problems within his body. And some people even think that he may have had some type of cancer in the world of cars. What's definitely true is that when he died, many cars were completely saddened and devastated for several months by this great loss. And tell me, friends, from what other movie or cartoons would you like to see the worst deaths? See you in the comments!